Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a game-changing weather pattern that will change the weather across the United States for the remainder of this year, and this will give us our first preview of what is to come for the next several months as we head closer to winter. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's begin with what's happening across the United States today that will change the weather for the next several weeks and as well as the next several months. And we'll begin with the trough that is currently located over parts of the Midwest. As of right now, this is bringing a huge cool down to much of the northern tier of the United States. We have a cold front that's extending all the way back through the Central Plains, and this cold front is super important to what's going to be happening for the next several weeks, because what this is a setting stone for the cool downs that we'll be seeing as we go later into this month and as well as into November. And this should actually keep the 100-degree weather that we've been seeing across much of Texas out of the picture for the rest of this year because of this cold front. This is essentially ushering in much colder air mass. It'll sit around for a little bit, and that'll kind of weaken overall the warmer air masses that we'll see down the road. So any big warm-ups that we see, temperatures will likely not get past 100, at least for Texas, and many other areas will experience the same sort of thing. But again, this is a very strong cold front. You'll notice behind it, the cloud cover is very minimal. That's very typical because of the sinking air. That's going to basically mean that we're not going to see any cloud cover behind it. One big thing with this, though, is it is so strong that we'll be seeing our first freeze of the year across much of the northern tier of the United States, primarily the northern plains for Saturday morning. We'll talk about more on that here in just a second. Back over on the east coast of the United States, it's actually very active over here. Main reason why is because we have a tropical cyclone Felipe. You might not even think that this thing still existed, but it does, and it's actually going to be making landfall in Maine this weekend, and it'll be bringing some heavy rainfall to New England, especially back up near Maine. It's going to be pretty quick moving overall. It's not going to be really a huge impact, but winds could be as high as 60 miles per hour upon landfall in parts of Maine. So that'll be something to watch out for Felipe as it moves off to the north, and that'll also bring some active weather across the east coast. The reason why it's not going further to the west is because of this cold front and that low pressure system. So overall, that's going to kind of hinder its direction overall. And then on the west coast of the United States, look at California. There's no clouds in the sky at all in California right now. It is actually very dry over there as everything is now pushing off to the east. Here are the temperatures right now. Again, spot the cold front. It's very easy to spot it. High or temperatures right now as of 5 o'clock Central Time, 54 degrees in southern Kansas. Go into Oklahoma, it's in the 70s. Even into Texas right now, it's in the mid 80s. So again, temperatures are going to drop substantially as we head into tomorrow. Here are those freeze warnings that are in effect across much of the northern tier of the United States, from Kansas all the way back through North Dakota. We also have flood watches in effect in parts of New England. That is ahead of that Felipe disturbance making landfall back up in Maine as we go into the later weekend. Now let's talk more about the weather pattern that'll be happening across the United States for the next week or week and a half. We're going to really talk about more about this week, though, because there's going to be some pretty big changes. So right now we have a low pressure system centered over parts of the Midwest. Notice the winds, by the way, they're very strong in the upper levels. This is the jet stream, very strong, and that's actually kind of giving you that idea that we have a pretty strong cold front behind it. Usually that's a pretty good resemblance of what we're seeing out there. Once we go into Sunday into Monday, notice we begin to see a trough still circulating around parts of Canada. That'll continue to bring some showers and a couple of storms. Notice back over here to the west, though, we actually have a high pressure system that'll start to filter in, and you're probably thinking we have an omega block again. It's not going to last very long, because right behind it we're going to have a trough, and this trough will actually bring the threat for some severe weather as we go late into next week. So we'll have to watch this closely. It's very far out. Obviously it's a long-term forecast, so things are subject to change, but there's a good chance we have another trough right behind this trough that we're seeing right now, and this one by next Thursday or Friday could bring some significant severe weather. In addition to this, it'll bring some cooler weather. So again, this is what we're going to be seeing over the next couple months, is frequent troughs, and that'll allow for that cool down to continue across much of the United States, therefore leading temperatures to go downhill from here. Overall, the average temperature week by week in your location will probably continue to go gradually down. There might be a week or two that are well above the week before, but again, we're going to start to see that gradual cool down more to fall and winter type weather that's coming soon. Here are the temperature anomalies across the United States as of right now, and as well as going to tomorrow morning. Again, notice this big cold air mass across the United States. That's where all that cooler weather is, well below average temperatures for much of the country. Notice by Sunday into Monday, that cooler weather will actually kind of sit across parts of the Midwest and East Coast, and that'll allow again for a cool down over there. We're going to start to see some warmer air retreating, or really entering, I should say, back into parts of the southern plains, and as well as across the west coast of the United States. States, because that trough will be pretty stationary, this thing will weaken pretty quickly as we get closer to Wednesday and Thursday of next week, therefore allowing for the next cool down right behind it to start to move into the United States, and that will be where our trough is centered by around Wednesday afternoon, and that'll start to usher in another cool down most likely by next week. This one could also be pretty impactful, bringing temperatures to around the same temperature point that we'll be at going into Friday or today, as well as into Saturday. So those will be the two kind of days that we're watching for in terms of similarities to next week's big pattern change, which will, by the way, come around the same days, Friday and Saturday. That's at least what we're thinking right now. Again, things are subject to change. Over the next several days, there actually is some snow in the forecast, none of which is in the United States, really. The only areas that we're watching, one of which is back over in Canada. This is a bit more certain right now. We'll probably see a few inches of snow just north of Michigan as we go throughout the weekend and into early next week. Over in the Rocky Mountains, there is a chance for snow, but this would come much later next week. So this would come around Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But again, uncertainty does remain, especially on that system right now. Here's the future radar for the next several days. Again, notice high pressure will be dominating across much of the United States. This is a pretty strong ridge in the central United States. It's surface-based, so again, you didn't really see that on the jet stream because it's, again, surface-based. Look at this going into Sunday. We actually could see some snow again back up in parts of Canada. That strong low pressure system will circulate up there. Once we go into Tuesday into Wednesday, notice again, pretty dry overall, but we might see a pretty strong trough eject over the Rocky Mountains. This again could bring some significant severe weather. There's a lot of uncertainty though here. Will we see significant severe weather? Could we even see some snow over the Rocky Mountains? Those questions have yet to be answered since we're just so far out right now, but it could be a pretty intense little trough that ejects over the Rocky Mountains. And again, we are entering the second severe weather season, which does mean we're going to see some severe weather. And again, the second severe weather season is not as bad as the first severe weather season. The first severe weather season is technically the spring. During the fall, we also start to see a ramp up of severe weather across the central and southern plains. Here are the temperatures forecasted across the United States from Thursday until Monday of next week. So this is from the 12th until the 16th. Notice below average temperatures are more likely than not across much of the United States. Some exceptions to that will include parts of the West Coast, and as well as a very small sliver of Maine, and as well as into parts of New Hampshire, and then back into parts of southern Florida will be a bit above average during that time frame. And then overall, the likelihood of above average temperatures will return to much of the northern tier of the United States and the West Coast from Saturday as well as to Friday. And this again from the 14th until the 20th. Below average temperatures are more likely than not across parts of the East Coast and southern tier of the United States. Precipitation's pretty similar to this. Again, precipitation above average across much of the East Coast of the United States, below average for the western tier of the United States. And then overall, as we go from Saturday the 14th until the 20th, next Friday, it's more likely than not we'll see below average precipitation across really a large chunk of the United States. The Midwest, the Great Plains, even the western tier of the United States, all included in that. Low temperatures tonight going into tomorrow morning. Notice again, below freezing temperatures are likely from Kansas all the way back through parts of the Dakotas. You will need a winter jacket tomorrow, perhaps in those areas, unless you're going out in shorts and a t-shirt, entirely possible. And then for the high temperatures for Saturday, notice actually a lot of those areas will actually get into the 60s, maybe even some low 70s for those areas that are going to be freezing. So pretty crazy stuff there. Midwest will be in the 50s and also some upper 40s. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.